And now, from Stage 21 at Universal Studios at Universal Orlando Resort, it's total non-stop action wrestling.
Well, we are back.
Can you believe it? We're finally back.
After a brief hiatus.
Unannounced hiatus.
We've returned for the first episode of the Death of TNA Podcast.
TNA is dying.
It's a dying breed. Welcome, folks. You may know us from the I Have Till 5 podcast. Matty, Mambo, along with Dynamite Dave.
And this is our spin-off show.
It's our spin-off show. But how do you make a spin-off more recognizable? How do you make it unique? You add a third co-host. So without further ado, she is the entity. She is the leader of the free world. She is Midnight Time. And she's in the house. In fact, she's right here. She's barely here. But she'll be chiming in with her thoughts every now and then, every now and again. But we figured that we would start this podcast by reviewing the event from last week, TNA Bound for Glory, which is supposedly their WrestleMania show.
Bound for garbage.
Bound for garbage. And in examining the so-called Death of TNA, we're going to kind of work our way backwards. So we're going to start this week with Bound for Glory, and then we're going to review the first shows of TNA. And then we're going to work our way up through the years. And we're going to come to a conclusion of, how did we get this bad? Because at one point, TNA was a very good product.
It was a while ago, and some of you may not remember that, but it actually was very entertaining.
Yep.
And there are many reasons for that, which we will discuss soon enough.
Right. But now, it's not. Now it's the laughingstock of the wrestling community. And we're going to figure out why.
So I guess we should just jump right into Bound for Garbage, right?
So without further ado, Bound for Glory 2014. Now, some history about Bound for Glory. Inexplicably, Bound for Glory has been TNA's WrestleMania show. And I say inexplicably because their first pay-per-view, on a monthly format, was an event called Victory Road. So by default, that should be the WrestleMania. I mean, at least I would think.
And it was a November show. And then Victory Road eventually moved to July for some reason.
Yeah.
And Bound for Glory. And it's not even... Slammiversary could have even been the
show.
WrestleMania show.
I would have Slammiversary, yeah.
That made sense, too.
Right. But it's Bound for Glory, something called Bound for Glory. And in previous years, last year and the few years before that, they would have something called the Bound for Glory series.
Which was an interesting concept.
Which was really, a chase for the cup, so to speak.
Yeah. It was an interesting concept. It was something I really haven't seen in wrestling before. And if done right, it could work.
So, if you're not familiar with it, throughout the calendar year of TNA, they would, they would have these wrestlers compete in something called the Bound for Glory series, which, you can earn a certain number of points for winning a match and how you win it, and...
Pinfall is worth, 3 points, and submission is 5 or something like that?
Yeah, it's something like that. There would be times where you can win a match and earn multiple points.
If you lose a match, you lose points.
Right, yeah, so it's a very detailed point system that, wrestlers were involved in for, many months, close to a year. As you may or may not know, last year AJ Styles won the Bound for Glory tournament series, which was pretty good because they were doing this redemption storyline with AJ, where AJ would rise back to the top. AJ ended up winning a big match that won him 20 points in the Bound for Glory series. So if you get 20 points, regardless of where you stand, you're probably going to win the series. Because you're not going to have enough matches to be able to recuperate from that deficit. So AJ Styles won, and then he went on the Bound for Glory, and he won the TNA Championship.
And then left.
And then, the rest from there was history, so to speak. And wow, that was a year ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
Can you believe it?
Well, and now AJ Styles is over in New Japan. New Japan, fighting in tremendous main events with Tanahashi, and serving as the unofficial leader of the Bullet Club. Right, AJ Styles was their biggest, star. So,
not worthy of the TNA Hall of Fame.
Yeah, not worthy of the TNA Hall of Fame. Something that we will definitely cover in this series, folks.
Oh yeah.
Because and here's just a little teaser of how that conversation is going to go. You have, 4 inductees, right? You have the Dudley Boys, or Team 3D.
Sting.
You have Sting, and then you have Kurt Angle. None of which started their careers in TNA.
None of which are known for their time in TNA.
Right.
Forget all that, because AJ didn't start his career in TNA, but he's known for his time.
I digress. So, Bound for Glory is the WrestleMania. Right, so you would think that it would be the most hyped up, and it's the event that they work for in terms of storylines. They build up for that event. This year, there was a strange exception to that rule, because the Bound for Glory card was not finalized until 2 weeks before the event.
Folks, the first thing you realize in Booking 101, you do not have your biggest show of the year, not have any semblance of a card or any idea of where you're going until 2 weeks before the show.
Right.
That just is blatantly obvious to anybody who knows how to promote anything.
And a major staple in this year's Bound for Glory event is that this is, first of all, the event is taking place from Japan, which I don't think is really that bad of an idea. But it's the staple of this event is a partnership that TNA has developed between TNA and themselves and Wrestle One, which has gone on for a while now. But to have the biggest show of the year, be a partnership event is kind of strange to me.
To have their biggest show of the year be on a tape delay when you're having people spend $40 on pay-per-view when they could just as easily read the spoilers and not spend the money,
right,
is also pretty ridiculous.
Right. So that's just kind of the background of TNA. I also want to bring up the fact that there's one championship on the line. Sorry, there are 2 championships on the line during this event. You have the X Division title. Sorry, the X Division Championship of the world.
Yes, get it right.
And the TNA Knockouts Championship. Or the TNA Women's Championship, whatever they call it.
Knockouts Championship.
Something wrong with this picture. Because none of which are, is the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. So, there is also that. There may have been some visa problems that may have prevented the title from being defended.
Again, biggest show of the year should not be in another country.
But again, not again, but the title wasn't even mentioned on the show. So, I don't know what the point of that was. So that's some background before you get started. So since it is sponsored by Wrestle One, the ring is decorated in Wrestle One because it doesn't say TNA anywhere, on the actual ring. It says Wrestle One on the ring, which is fine. But again,
I guess TNA just couldn't afford to bring in their own ring.
Again, this is the biggest show of the year. Also, we've gone back to using the 6-sided ring, and inexplicably we get a 4-sided ring.
Because they couldn't afford to bring their own ring.
Well, either they couldn't afford it or the venue was too small, whatever. So, again, Wrestle One partnership. Something that shouldn't happen on your biggest show of the year. So, that's just the background. Because we're going to jump right into this thing. First of all,
ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say that before recording this, we just watched it. So not only did I have to suffer through watching this once, I now get to suffer through reliving it.
Well, I watched it twice. I saw it twice. I watched it last week when it came on, and I watched it again.
I don't know how you managed to do that to yourself.
I watched it 3 times.
Oh my!
No, you didn't.
Yeah, I did. Better than you all.
She watched it maybe one half of the time.
One half. She's better than you, so there's that.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Please make sure you're buckled in for this one.
Gonna be a wild ride.
We start the show with a pretty well done video package, which hypes the main event match. The main event match is James Storm teaming up with the Great Sonata, taking on the Great Muta and Tajiri. The background of the story, if you don't know, is that James Storm is this kind of crazy preacher cult leader.
Bray Wyatt.
Bray Wyatt. It's kind of Bray Wyatt meets, the Fallen Angel from 2003-ish. So he is, running around doing his antics, and he convinces Sonata, who is a protege of the Great Mutas, to turn on the Great Muta and join James Storm. So as he turns on, so after he turns on Muta, Sonata becomes the Great Sonata. It starts coming out in face paint that, very reminiscent of the Great Muta from back in the day. As you know, Great Muta wears a mask now, because he's very old to be wearing face paint. And then they also add Manic to the group. Manic, who is the former Suicide, TJ Perkins. TJ Perkins.
Wrong yick.
Wow.
You're having a lot of difficulty right now, aren't you?
Yep, it's not easy, folks, keeping up with all this crap. So TJ Perkins / Manic joins, James Storm's group. And they're all trying to find their way. They're all trying to be reborn under the cowboy, James Storm. So that's the thing. And I guess the main event is supposed to be some kind of revenge match. Because you have Muta and Tajiri taking on Storm and the Great Sonata.
And you can't forget, in that video, they also mentioned Team 3D.
Oh, that's right. So since Team 3D was inducted in Japan the night prior into the TNA Hall of Fame, we get a number of Team 3D video packages and recaps that we will discuss all of them. And we will discuss what's wrong with all of them.
Yeah.
So we get a good video package, hyping at least one match. Okay, that's fine. So then we go to the ring and we get Jeremy Borash, and Jeremy Borash announces that the arena that they're in, which I think is Tokugawa Hall.
Yeah.
Is the most famous arena in Japan and in Japanese wrestling. Wrong.
You know what that is?
Wrong. Because everyone knows, except for Jeremy Borash, that this is the Tokyo Dome, right? This is Tokyo Dome. And everyone in Japan knows to be at Tokyo Dome on January 4 every year. Everyone knows that in Japan. But sure, I understand Jeremy Borash, because he's not going to say, oh, hey, this is the worst arena in the world.
Or that this is some second-class arena. No.
Right. But Borash is wrong. And then
flat out lie like that shouldn't happen.
And then Borash says, this is TNA, welcome to Bound for Glory. Very strange for a WrestleMania caliber event to open up with the announcer telling you what the name of the event is.
We already know what the event is. We're watching it.
Right. So, the first match we get is a Wrestle 1 versus TNA match. We get Tanaka facing off against Manic, the heel Manic.
A match that has absolutely nothing to do with the TNA storyline at all.
And it's something that you'll notice, save for maybe 2 or 3 matches on the card. A lot of the matches are, not relevant to a TNA program, or they are, or they ignore the alignment of the characters. So, for example, heel comes out, gets cheered by the crowd, and the heel doesn't really do anything, to stay being a heel. So there's no alignment in these matches at all. So
in fact, the only matches that had anything to do with the only matches that had anything to do with storyline were the main event and the knockouts match.
Right. Yeah.
That was it.
Right. So alignments are ignored, and we just kind of have these, I don't want to say throwaway matches, but we have these matches that throwaway matches, right?
They're there for the sake of being there, right, and for no other reason.
And they need the space to fill up the time. Pretty solid match to open up the show. There's this one spot where Manic is thrown into the ropes, and he kind of wedges himself between the second rope and the top rope like a spider. I thought that was pretty cool. And then Manic hits one of my favorite finishers of all time, the Brainbuster. Lots of near falls in this match, or as I say, mid falls. Lots of mid falls in this match.
I don't even know where you get mid. I think that's time.
But Tanaka wins the match with a cross armbar. Here's my problem with this. Biggest event of the year, something that we'll say multiple more times on this show. In fact, I want you to take a shot every time we say biggest event of the year or biggest show of the year. I'm pretty sure that you'd be very drunk by now. But biggest event of the year, again, a TNA guy is facing a Wrestle 1 guy, and the TNA guy loses. Huh?
I know, it's just...
I mean, like,
no sense to it.
you're TNA, and you're in Japan. This is your biggest event. Shouldn't you want your guy to win the first match?
You would think that, but no.
Head scratcher. And then after this match, we get a nice little clip which shows an old Dudley Boys match from TNA. And in this clip, the Dudley Boys are facing Rick Steiner and Road Warrior Animal.
One of the greatest tag teams of all time, or at least one half of one of the greatest tag teams of all time, and the other half of a different great tag team.
Right. Exactly.
Instead of having both Steiners there, where you could have had the Steiner brothers. But okay.
And I see what they're trying to do here. They're trying to remind fans of how awesome the Dudley Boys were in TNA. But why would you show this match? Awful. Awful match. First of all,
dumb decisions.
Everyone in the ring is so fat and out of shape. It's like watching, two... not even two sumo wrestlers, because sumo wrestlers move quicker than this.
Holy cow, that's messed up.
But it is the slowest thing I've ever seen, and it's like a hardcore match or something like that.
And the clip they're showing, because it's supposed to be a clip, the clip they're showing is like 5 minutes long.
Yeah, horrible. I don't know why they would choose that match. But don't worry, folks, we got more of that where that came from. So next, we see EC3 enter the arena. And, he does an interview, about his, his breakup with Rockstar Spud, and, EC3, found a replacement for Rockstar Spud. Something that I did notice throughout this promo was that EC3 loves to raise his eyebrows up. He kept doing that throughout the whole promo.
The best part of it is right after that, though.
Right after that, we get a video package of EC3 talking about his undefeated streak that he has going, and it focuses on the following TNA stars, his victories over the following TNA stars: Sting, okay, Kurt Angle, Rhino. It focuses on Rhino as well. And it also focuses on Bully Ray. What's the one thing that these guys have in common?
They're older than dirt.
Right. So you have a young guy, good-looking guy, good physique, good wrestler, bragging about his victories over old men.
Who aren't nearly as good as they once were.
If they're trying to build him up as a legitimate threat, then put him up against legitimate talent.
Maybe it's just because he's the legend killer now.
Oh, yeah, he could be a legend killer. But, how is Rhino a legend to anyone? Right?
Fair point.
Build him up legitimately as a legitimate star, but not as a guy that beats around old men.
Yeah, that's just not cool. And
All
then
right.
after
So we get the video package.
and after
After that, his match, and he comes out and he talks on the mic.
so we've had something like 5 to 10 minutes of EC3 promos, and it's just why?
It's too much. My favorite part of the promo, the crowd is cheering for EC3, and EC3 opens by saying, "Finally, I get the respect that I deserve."
And then he mocks everybody.
And then he goes on to insult them. He goes, "Okay, I'm gonna speak some Japanese. Me EC3. Me very good. Me undefeated." And then he goes, "All right, so I just spoke fluent Japanese. Now I'm gonna say it in English."
Are you sure that was your favorite
Cute.
part, though?
Cute. It was a cute segment. My favorite part though was that whoever the director is, the producers and directors of TNA, everyone that on Tumblr that bitches about the WWE's production team and that bitches about Kevin Dunn.
Oh,
These guys make Kevin Dunn look like the Michael Jordan of production, because these guys then start to show Japanese people in the crowd as he's going on this racist kind of dialogue.
And nobody understands a word that he's saying anyway.
Right. And the Japanese fans are just smiling because I don't think they know what's going on. I don't think that they know what's going on. And the crowd, we haven't talked about the crowd yet.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to it now.
No, you want to get to it now? Okay.
Because I'm the star of this show.
Uh,
The crowd is not your typical Japanese crowd. It's not the crowd that you would see at PW Noah or at New Japan.
or at All Japan.
Or at All Japan.
Practically any Japanese wrestling event.
The crowd is very loud, very vocal, and they're chanting lots of things that American fans would chant. Either EC3, either holy shit they chant at one point. They chant ECW at one point. So it leads me to believe that there's either plants in the crowd, or TNA has done a good job at directing the fans what to chant. And directing the fans to chant.
Either way, not cool.
Very, very surreal for me to watch. Very surreal.
You almost forgot that it was in Japan.
Yeah. Also, we're in Japan and they're doing this. Also, during EC3's promo, I'm explaining to Dave here, the basics about wrestling in Japan. So, we're kind of not paying attention. We tune back into the promo to hear EC3 saying, ham, slam, ham, slam, ham, slam, ham, and a slam. And I'm like, huh? What a time to tune back into a promo. So it went from him praising the crowd to him speaking in racist Japanese to him saying ham, slam, ham, slam.
To him speaking in tongues, basically.
Oh.
Unbelievable.
So the match is Hammer, who is this enormous sumo wrestler looking guy, versus EC3. In I don't want to say it was a bad match, because believe it or not, I've seen worse. But I'm going to say in a weird match. A weird match. Because Hammer's great. Hammer's a big guy, comes out smiling, the crowd loves him. And Hammer really kicked EC3's ass throughout the whole match. There were some spots where, Hammer gives EC3 a big elbow drop. And I cringed for EC3, because that's got to hurt.
But don't forget the stink face.
And then Hammer, because he wears the sumo attire, very similar to Rikishi / Junior Fatu. In TNA, he was known as Junior Fatu.
I remember that.
And he gave him a stink face. Horrible. Horrible. And then EC3 wins with, his finisher after the stink face. Because he gives him the stink face, and then Hammer, is forced to move away. And instead of moving away, Hammer just kind of stands up. with his back turned towards EC3. EC3 hits a low blow, and then gets him with his finish. Weird.
Yeah, that made no sense at all.
More Dudley Boys clips. This time we get a clip, the Dudley Boys in a cage versus Beer Money.
Now, Beer Money is great, but again, we get this long clip for some reason instead of just something really quick showing, hey, look, Dudleys have this championship. Yay, praise them.
Right, yeah. A segment where they talk about their championships or a segment where they don't show their matches. Because the people that are watching this event, the people that have ordered this show, most likely know who the hell the Dudley Boys are and what they've done.
And are looking to see the current show, not the old shows.
Right. MVP arrives and he cuts a promo backstage about Japan, wrestling in Japan, his history wrestling in Japan. You know, he goes, people have asked me why I turned down a multi-million-dollar deal to wrestle in Japan. Because you were not offered a multi-million-dollar deal, nor did you wrestle for a multi-million-dollar deal in the WWE. But hey, continuity though. It's continuity from his old WWE executive type MVP free agent thing.
Exactly.
So I like it.
You know what? It actually was. This was not a bad promo at all.
No. And MVP is a good guy on the mic too, so
Oh yeah,
I'll give him that. So MVP / The Punisher comes out for his match against Sakamoto. And this is actually a good match. Good match. Good action. Back and forth. Pander to the crowd. The crowd was into it. MVP wins the match.
Match of the night.
I wouldn't go that far. Because the match of the night is coming up next. Samoa Joe is backstage and he talks about, the X Division title of Japan.
The X Division champion of the world.
The X Division champion of the world. One of my pet peeves during this match. The X Division champion of the world. Why?
Because he's the X Division champion, and he's the best X Division champion in the world. Therefore, he's the X Division champion of the world.
He is the best X Division champion in the entire world. Because there are multiple X Division champions, right? Multiple.
I'm sure there are. I am sure there are.
Low-Key versus Kaz Hayashi versus Samoa Joe. The backstory between for this match, I think either someone else was supposed to be entered into the match or it was supposed to be a one-on-one match. Mike Tenay recommended Kaz Hayashi, and the guys from Wrestle One loved it. The guys from Wrestle One were enamored with Mike Tenay that he knew who Kaz Hayashi was. And throughout this event, on the commentary side of it, if you don't think that Mike Tenay knows Japanese wrestling, you're wrong. Because he goes out of his way to prove to you that he knows Japanese wrestling. Very annoying. Very annoying. But I will give the announcing team props. Because if you're watching this show and you've never seen any of these wrestlers, Tenay does a good job at introducing them to you.
And you know what? Remember, Tenay is also broadcasting for the American audience, and chances are most of them haven't seen Japanese wrestling. I mean, the hardcore fans will have, but most of the casual fans who are watching, no.
Sure. Well, actually, I would think that anyone who's ordering this show would know something about Japanese wrestling.
Fair point, because I guess,
This show.
ordering any TNA shows at this point has got to be a hardcore fan of some sort.
Right. But, again, Tenay goes out of his way. Tenay is a know-it-all.
We get it.
And Taz is awful. Taz is straight garbage throughout this whole show. I mean, I don't remember Taz being this horrible, but he is horrendous.
Makes you want Don West back.
Yeah, he is kind of surpassed the Don West level of atrociousness. Horrible. Taz is horrible. And don't worry, we'll give examples throughout. Such as during this match. So, Low-Key Joe, Kaz Hayashi for the X title. Very good match. There's one point where... Oh, well, actually, I missed it. During the MVP match, MVP delivered a vicious boot to the face to Sakamoto. And Taz was talking about how the strong style was taking a hold of the match. Meanwhile, that was the only strong style-esque type of stiff boot that was during the entire match. So that's one example. During this match, Taz was just kind of marking out the whole time. Taz has become the match striker of TNA.
Oh man, don't do that.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true. And you know what? It's real.
Oh, it's real.
It's very real.
I was letting you set that one up, and you just took it. I'm proud of you.
So, three-way match, very good match. Low key, despite his brief retirement, very good. Still good. Will always be good. And Low Key and Samoa Joe, they do have a chemistry there. Kaz Hayashi, also very good.
So it was a fun match.
After this match, we get more Dudley's Boys hype. Yawn. We know the Dudley Boys. We know they're getting inducted, and we know that they're fighting a match.
You know they got inducted.
Yeah. So we know they're in the Hall of Fame. What we don't know is that they're fighting in the main event, which you wouldn't have known if you were watching this show.
They weren't in the main event.
In a main event, which you wouldn't have known if you were watching this show without looking at the card beforehand. But guess what? The Dudley Boys are actually featured on this show in a wrestling capacity.
The next match on TNA Bound for Glory is a Wrestle 1 match. No TNA.
Right.
Who needs TNA on a TNA event, right?
Right. It's I forget the guys' names, but one is the El Hijo del Pantera, the son of Pantera, somewhat popular wrestler from Mexico.
The only thing I can remember from this match is arguing with Matt over.
I don't remember the names. I don't remember the names of the other three guys. It was a Wrestle 1 match. It wasn't a bad match, but again, it was a Wrestle 1 match
on a TNA show
on the biggest event of the year.
Yeah.
And the thing that I love the most about this match is that Taz, before the match begins, almost immediately craps on the match, which renders it, pointless to watch because the announcers are crapping all over the match. And Tenay tries to make the save, but
it's a little late now.
Yeah, there's only so much that Mike can do. The announcing sucks. Sorry, the announcing sucks. Next, we get the Dudley Boys taking on the team of Tommy Dreamer and Abyss.
How does this match even make sense?
In a hardcore match. For whatever reason, Dreamer and Abyss are teaming up. And Dreamer is making his entrance trying to mimic Terry Funk.
Again, no point.
Very confused. And I'm also confused why Tommy Dreamer is facing the two men that he inducted into the TNA Hall of Fame the night prior. Like, can you imagine, can you imagine, who are some of the inductees? Oh, can you imagine the Rhodes brothers, fighting Dusty Rhodes on WrestleMania the night after they inducted them?
No, but to be fair, if someone, who inducted Flair into the Hall of Fame?
I don't remember.
Because I could honestly imagine if Sting had inducted Ric Flair into the Hall of Fame, and then the next night Flair, of course, had his retirement match, if they had Sting versus Flair. I could see that happening, for instance. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, but that's a rare exception because these guys were in a pretty good program. Like if The Rock was inducted by Austin,
and then they wrestled,
that'd be fine. But in this scenario, it doesn't make sense to me.
Fair enough.
Again,
this was one of the slowest paced hardcore matches of all time. Dare I say the second slowest paced hardcore match of all time.
Well, all these guys in the ring are just, kudos to Bully Ray, because Bully Ray actually lost a lot of weight. But other than that, these are very large men in a hardcore match. Very slow. Very slow. And the winner, of course, Team 3D.
Shocker.
The Women's Championship, Velvet Sky faces off against the champion, Havoc.
Okay match. It was okay.
Well, I liked it. I liked the match. I thought it was a good match. Havoc is great. Havoc is a great knockout to have. Imagine if she was in the WWE.
She'd be on Total Divas at
the havoc that she would cause.
Ha ha ha!
And she wouldn't be on Total Divas. There's no way she would be on Total Divas.
Ha ha ha! The havoc that she would cause.
But, Havoc dominates most of the match and wins. Retains the championship. The main event, which we get a James Storm interview from. The Great Muta. Keiji Muto. Teaming up with Tajiri. Against the Great Sonata and the Cowboy. James Storm. In a pretty decent match. Now, when I saw on the card that Muta was headlining this show, I thought, wow, that's very strange for the 50-year-old Muta to be in the main event. But Muto, Muto is his real last name, so I'm not, I don't want you to think I'm butchering his name. But Muto was pretty damn good, and for a guy his age, he is quick. Still does all his classic signature moves with, the same fluidity that he did when he was younger. And you know what? Good main eventer. And it was an okay main event. It wasn't a great match. It was a good match. The finish comes when Sonata is springboarding off the third rope. And he springboards down onto Muta and Tajiri, who both spray green mist at the same time into Sonata's face. And then Tajiri hits the buzzsaw kick, and then Muto gets the Shining Wizard for the win. And that's it.
That was the show.
That's how you win TNA Bound for Glory, 2014.
To have how many matches did TNA win on that whole show? Not including the TNA versus TNA match.
1. TNA won 1 match. Now, mind you, it's not a war between the two. They have a partnership. Yeah. But they won 1 match on the show.
It's unbelievable.
Which was EC3. Oh, sorry, 2 matches. 2 matches. Because EC3 beat Hama, and then, MVP won his match against Sakamoto. But, so 2. But hey, this is WrestleMania. Can you imagine WrestleMania, WrestleMania 31, say WWE partners up with New Japan, and it happens in, Tokyo Dome. And
I can't imagine that even being allowed to happen.
Well, that. But can you imagine they have a bunch of New Japan people on the card, and they all win? You have Tanahashi facing off against, Randy Orton or Roman Reigns, and Tanahashi wins. Or you have Bullet Club, against, another faction.
There's no faction in the WWE anymore.
Oh, that's right.
The Shield broke up a while ago, and the only faction you had was the Wyatt family, and Harper and Rowan have been sent on their separate ways, so there's nothing.
Or imagine you just have a couple matches. Yeah, you have Okada versus Nakamura on WrestleMania, which it does not involve any WWE guys whatsoever.
I mean, I can imagine them having one Japanese match on the card, not as part of a WWE versus New Japan thing, but I can imagine them saying, here's one New Japan match, here's the rest of WrestleMania. WWE would pull it off in a way where they're actually continuing their own storylines, and they're saying, here, we also showcase wrestling from outside of the United States, too.
Well, then isn't that what TNA did?
Well, they showcased one match from outside the country, but they also didn't have anything that included their own storylines or anything like that. Remember that. Right. WWE would have their world champion on the show at WrestleMania.
The problem with this was that it's the biggest show of the year taking place in a partnership role. There's nothing wrong with a partnership event.
It just can't be the biggest
We know
show
that.
of the year.
We've seen it with Ring of Honor. And we're going to see it, on January 4 with Global Force Wrestling. which is a huge thing for Global Force because that's the biggest show of the year that they're partnering up with.
Yeah.
You know, and Global Force, you know, they're getting their start with that show. It's a big show. But
to not have any of your own storylines
Yeah.
on the show, for it to just be strictly a partnership show, makes absolutely no sense when it's your big show of the year.
yeah, and you know, only one, you know, there was only one true story, and that revolved around the main event, and it was just very strange for that. I don't see how TNA expects a lot of people to have bought this event, because TNA did not give a reason for anyone to order this show.
Forget the fact that it was an okay show at best. There was nothing dealing with TNA really involved with it. I mean, holy cow.
Yeah.
Makes absolutely no sense
Yeah.
at all.
It was very unfortunate. And it's types of weird decisions like this that we will continue to talk about on this series. But we figured that this would be a good place to start because it was a mistake. And we want to figure out how we got to this point. You know, how do we get to the point where the biggest show of the year has no TNA star, like true TNA stars? You know, the world champion Bobby Roode wasn't even mentioned on the show. Not even mentioned. You know, the only time he was featured was in the Dudley Boys video clip.
With the tag team beer money. It had
Right.
nothing to do with anything.
Right. You know, and you know, you expect people to buy this? Like, I'm really interested to see what the buy rate was of this show.
I can't wait for the numbers. That's, I mean, like 40,
My God.
like 40 buys.
If that, you know, maybe the TNA diehards bought it, and that's fine. But how do you expect anyone to buy this show?
There was no reason to.
There's
At all.
no reason. You know, and I definitely think the actual company that is partnering with TNA has a lot to do with it. You know, I can't think of lots of people that, you know, have even heard of Wrestle One in Japan.
Of course, they're going to partner up with the one organization that nobody knows about at all. It's not like they partner with New Japan or even All Japan.
Even All Japan.
All Japan would have been a great partnership.
You know, because
I don't know if TNA is even considered big enough now at this point to even team with them.
or Noah. You know, no one partners up with Noah.
Would have been great.
Why not?
Would have been great, but TNA dropped the ball. What else is new?
They dropped the ball, and that's what we're going to talk about in this series. We're going to talk about how they dropped the ball. We're going to talk about how they may very well be dead. You know, we may not even get to finish this show
Before they're officially dead.
before they're dead. And that's why it's called the Death of TNA, because we're going to examine the death of TNA. And we're going to talk about, you know, the comparisons between the death of TNA and WCW. You know, if any of you have bought or read the second edition of the Death of WCW book, at the end of the book, there's a whole chapter on all of the mistakes that TNA has made, and we'll read them to you, and we'll go over them. You know, we'll draw those comparisons. But the main difference was that TNA was never to the level that WCW was in 96 and 97.
Yeah. WCW, at least when WCW was on top, they were the king.
Yeah. But you know what? They could have been
On top.
on that level.
And we will go into how they could have been on that level and what went wrong.
That's right. And the format is going to be pretty simple. We're going to go over, you know, year by year almost, and we're going to talk about the notable shows and the notable acquisitions and the notable mistakes. There will be shows where we review a pay-per-view event, such as the next show will be our review of TNA's very first show from Nashville, 2002. The very first show as NWA TNA. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to review it. And we're going to, talk about how how big that was for TNA and how it started.
We're going to talk about Fox Sports Net.
Yep, TNA owns Fox Sports Net. The impact of TNA's first
Real TV deal.
Yeah, real TV deal.
And we're going to talk about Victory Road 04.
Their first
Pay-per-view.
monthly formatted
Yeah,
pay-per-view.
Monthly pay-per-view.
And we're going to talk about the acquisitions of, people that TNA thought would make a big difference. Raven. When Raven came in, he was a big deal. Christian Cage. Jeff Hardy.
Hey, when Christian was in TNA, that was a lot of fun. That was still when TNA was riding pretty well.
Jeff Hardy. We'll talk about how they dropped the ball with AJ Styles. Multiple times. Ultimate X match. Team of Canada. Lots of things to discuss on this show.
There's a lot about TNA. A lot of really great stuff. And a lot of stuff that makes you question why you even watched it.
Yep. And we'll talk about all of it. We'll talk about the good stuff. We don't want to sit here bitching for an hour of our lives.
Yeah, it's not a good feeling. It really isn't.
Well, we will review it. We'll talk about it. And fans of the I Have Till 5 Wrestling Podcast, we will also be back at some point with that. Sometime in the near future. But for now on, this is the Death of TNA Podcast. Midnight Time is so bored by the event that she is sleeping. She has been snoring for this entire review, and I don't blame her, because TNA didn't give her a reason to watch. Or anyone. Matty Mambo here for Dynamic Dave.
Oh, it's dynamic now.
Yep. Dynamite Dynamic. You know what? Make sure you support pro wrestling. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us.
See you next time.